Good afternoon. I'm Tim Fullerton, the Director of Digital Strategy here at the U.S. Department of the Interior. We want to welcome you to the roof of the main interior building here in beautiful Washington, D.C. We're going to try something a little bit different and do it up here today and give you some of our great public lands right behind us with the Washington Monument here. We're very fortunate to have Secretary Jewell with us today for the next 30 to 35 minutes, who will be answering your questions over the next half hour or so on a variety of topics, but most importantly, Saturday will be the 20th time that we've had the National Public Lands Day, which is a big day on public lands across the country. Hundreds of thousands of people volunteer. It's a great opportunity to get out there and do some good on public lands. So please feel free to use the chat right on the screen here, and we've also got some emailed questions as well. But first, I want to turn it over to Secretary Jewell to provide some opening remarks. Secretary Jewell.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks to all of you for tuning in to this live chat. It's difficult to get around this great landscape and see everybody, and it's really wonderful to have colleagues like Tim that facilitate technology so that I do get a chance to hear directly from you and the questions that you'd like to ask me about the broad world that is the Department of the Interior. I do want to say that one of my favorite days of the year is coming up this Saturday, and that is National Public Lands Day. Over the course of a number of years, I've had the privilege of volunteering a great deal on our public lands, and I want to thank the National Environmental Education Foundation that started National Public Lands Day 20 years ago so that we could connect so many people to our public lands. I think their first Public Lands Day was very small. Coming up, we're looking at 180,000 volunteers for this year, and they'll be at about 2,200 sites. And I went to just cruise around their website before this presentation today, and their tagline for this Saturday is Helping Hands for America's Lands. So I encourage you, as I did, to go to their website, publiclandsday.org, and you can see just by clicking on your state what's happening close to you. And I hope that you will join me in getting out and doing a little sweat equity on our nation's public lands. This Saturday, I get to go to Atlanta, where I'm going to be working on the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Site, and that will be the childhood home of Dr. King. I'll be at the Ebenezer Baptist Church as well. We're going to be doing weeding and painting and mulching and picking up garbage. But most importantly, when you get out and you connect to public lands, you never look at that site in the same way. You'll never look at Dr. King's memorial in the same way if you get out there and you work on it. And that's true for public lands around the country. So I hope that you will join, just as people did last year, picking up garbage. And I think we had many tons, 500 tons of garbage picked up last year, 23,000 pounds of invasive species removed, and the invasive species are everywhere. At this time of climate change, at this time of tight budgets, volunteerism makes a huge difference. So I do hope that you'll get out and join me, and maybe take a young person by the hand to give them an introduction to our public lands as well. So with that little commercial for getting out and volunteering on the public lands, I'd be delighted to take your questions. So Tim, whether there's some online or if you've got some that were emailed in, fire away.
Great. Well, we were inundated with questions, so we'll just get right ahead and start to it. This one is from Sal in Virginia. And they're asking, are there plans to increase access and bandwidth to social media and mobile phones in our parks and forests through cell towers and other devices? Do you believe that this is a positive direction for these places?
You know, thanks, Sal in Virginia, for the question. There's no question that we are all tied into our mobile technology today. And while children are spending a lot of time in front of a screen in their recreational time, and I talk a lot about that, I also know that mobile technology and tablets and things like that can really help connect us to the natural world. So one of the things that we're seeing in a number of national parks, for example, and wildlife refuges, is interpretive information that is place-based and tied into GPS satellites that help you understand what you're seeing. And the National Mall that's behind me here is one such place where you can learn about history based on where you are with a good mobile connection. So while it's not going to happen everywhere, and there are challenges with getting cell phone coverage, certainly in some of our more remote places, I would say that the Department of the Interior across our bureaus appreciates the importance of technology and how people interact with the natural world as well as with each other. And sometimes even when you're sitting listening to an interpretive message on your phone that's based on the place, you'll find people gathering around to listen to that same message, and it helps our resources go farther too. So I think it's a good call out and something that we're definitely investing in where the budget allows.
Great, thank you, Secretary Jewell. And I'll just add that if you're out on our public lands this Saturday and you're using your phone to take photos to share with your friends and family, please use the hashtag NPLD20 so that we can get out the word further about this great day. So the next question, we're going to shift to the budget question that's on a lot of people's mind right now. And we've got a lot of questions on this, but this one's from Rachel in South Dakota. And she is asking, what can we, the citizens who love these public lands, do to keep these places open and well-funded?
Well, I appreciate the question, Rachel. It's certainly been very challenging in the just under 6 months that I've been here. Department of Interior, as with every other federal agency, has been operating under a continuing resolution with a sequester that has forced budget cuts across the board. In many of our facilities, we see the highest levels of visitation and need during the summer. And our seasonal ranger force and our seasonal wildlife biologists, a lot of times young people who are looking potentially at building careers, have been hit hardest by the sequester and the budget situation. So I would say that all of us need to make the case for the importance of public lands and the good work that's done by people on public lands. And one of the things that I say often in speeches is, when you see a federal employee, give them a hug or say thanks for the work that they do, because there's an awful lot of negative messages. And coming from the private sector, I can tell you that there's many hardworking people throughout the federal family that are trying to do good work for the common good, for tribal nations across this country, for public lands and wildlife and the diversity of species, as well as energy development and water and things that people care a great deal about. So we really need to get back to regular order in the budget. And we also will pledge to you that we will use our resources wisely. I'll bring my business experience to bear in making sure that we're spending our money efficiently, but we really can't do it when we're operating on a week-to-week basis with continuing resolutions without thoughtful strategy on how we manage our resources.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Jewell. The next question is related to energy development on public lands, and this is also from Virginia, and it's from Keith. And he is asking, what are some of the ways that the department can balance energy development with the conservation of public lands in order to produce energy while also sustaining outdoor recreation?
Well, I really appreciate that question. Balance is a key word. We are mandated by the various laws that govern the work of the Department of the Interior to be thoughtful and balanced in how we use the resources, particularly within the Bureau of Land Management and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. So that's onshore and offshore, where the lion's share of our resources are developed. Balance is important. There are places where nobody would want to see development. You can think of some of the iconic spots around the country, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Yosemite, but also places like the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which the President has made clear is not for energy development, and yet the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, which we're working closely with indigenous communities there as well as the state to open a lot up for energy development. So we want to be thoughtful, and one of the priorities that I've set for Interior in terms of how we look at the lands under our stewardship is developing a landscape level approach. So that's really understanding, where are the resources? Where are the sacred sites that are important to our nation's first people? Where are the areas that are critical habitat? How can we look at all of that on a landscape level so we focus on our energy development on areas where the conflict is lower, and we can help prioritize those areas that are really special because we understand them and can set them aside. So it's complicated, but balance is important, and we are committed to both, and we don't think that it has to be a trade-off. We think we can have both.
Great. And that actually leads us into our next question, which we've gotten a lot of questions around climate change and the President's climate action plan. So this one is, generally speaking, what is Interior's role in helping to promote the President's climate action plan?
Well, first, I'm proud to work for the president who stepped up in front of a national audience and laid out a climate action plan. We are really feeling the effects of climate change throughout the country, and certainly in the resources that Interior manages, whether it's intensely hot wildfires, as we still have burning just inside and outside of Yosemite National Park, whether it's droughts or floods, as we've seen droughts, floods, and fires in Colorado this year, and our thoughts are with people in Colorado as they dig out from the challenges that they had recently with floods. We do have challenges in water supplies, too much water in some areas and droughts in other areas. So what's Interior's role? Multiple roles, as you might imagine, with 1 in 5 acres of land in the United States. One is to power our future in new ways. So my predecessor, Ken Salazar, and his team did a fantastic job of standing up renewable energy projects and permitting 13 gigawatts of renewable energy since 2009 on public lands. These are projects that can really help power ourselves into the future with renewable energy sources, and they're being done in ways that really pay attention to what are the conservation ideals on the landscape, as we're doing, for example, in the Mojave Desert, to thoughtful management of conventional and unconventional fossil fuels, and working with industry to develop those and do them in more effective ways in terms of reduced carbon and for the energy output. So certainly renewable energy, certainly conservation of resources, and preparing our country and our landscapes for the realities of climate change. Just a quick example, if I might, Tim. Hurricane Sandy, huge devastating impact, obviously in the northeastern part of our country. But what we learned from that, and we can help share those lessons, is what Mother Nature knows about resilient natural infrastructures and the ability to take the lessons from Mother Nature and apply them ourselves. So we will be doing that in Hurricane Sandy mitigation. We'll be using young people. We're using it as an educational opportunity to show communities where hardened infrastructure sometimes was worse for the structures behind. Soft green infrastructure sometimes was better for structures behind, and how can we learn from Mother Nature and apply those lessons to the future? So there's just a lot going on around climate change at Department of Interior, and we have lots to learn and to share.
Great. And if you're looking for more detailed information on our work on renewable energy and climate change in general, you can go to www.doi.gov and go to the What We Do section, and we have all kinds of information on there of the specific projects that we're working on all across the country. And if you're just joining us, I just want to remind you that we are sitting here with Secretary Sally Jewell, who is answering your questions on a variety of topics related to the department, but most specifically about the 20th National Public Lands Day, which is coming up this Saturday. We're going to stay on the climate change related question here, and this one is from John in Oregon, who's probably been deeply affected by this issue. The question is, what actions are planned and what plans are being activated to reduce catastrophic fire effects on our public lands?
Well, I appreciate that from John, and I know you had a spectacular summer in the Northwest, I'm told, so I kind of missed my Northwest quadrant on a beautiful summer like you've just had. Wildfires are a huge issue and a growing issue across the country. We have been working with your Senator, Ron Wyden, and with others on Capitol Hill and within the administration on a longer-term fix for wildland fires. We treat emergencies like hurricanes and earthquakes and floods with emergency money, but we tend to treat wildfires within our regular budget. So when we do have really tough seasons, we end up focusing on suppression of the resource, putting out the fire, but it takes money from other parts of our programs, including removing hazardous fuels that can cause fires to burn hotter. As we become smarter as a people and land manager, you realize that natural fire is really important to managing an ecosystem, but when we go for years without natural fires, we end up with fires that are far more devastating. So we will be working closely with Capitol Hill and with the administration on a longer-term fix that enables us to be smarter about taking care of those landscapes, removing fuels, and not having to pull money out of the budget just to fight fires. The other thing I just want to say is for those people who love living in the woods, you do take on a personal responsibility of making sure you're clearing hazardous fuels around your structure as well, because so much of our firefighting money goes to protect what we're calling the wildland-urban interface. So I just encourage those of you that do have a place in the woods to help us out by removing the hazardous fuels on your property as well.
Great, thank you, Secretary Jewell. And now, let's see, we're getting a lot of questions on the chat here. We're going to start off with one that we've gotten a lot of variations of, so we're going to wrap them all together. And this one is related to the National Academy of Science released a study on the Bureau of Land Management's Wild Horse and Burro program. What do you see as the future of the Wild Horse and Burro program at the Bureau of Land Management?
You know, the challenge of how to effectively address rapidly growing population of wild horses and burros on public lands is one that I know a tremendous number of people in the country care a lot about, and tend to send me a lot of letters and ask a lot of questions, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the passion that there is around wild horses and burros in the West. I also know that the National Academy of Sciences study validated what the Land Management Organization has been saying, which is that the herds double in size every 3.5 years if left unchecked. So there were recommendations in the study with regard to birth control. It's an imperfect solution. The Bureau of Land Management has worked to try that out. They are analyzing the data in the study, and I really have encouraged them to figure out what they can do to manage this, where we can learn, not only from the National Academy of Sciences study, but also from the private sector. Are there more effective birth control methods that industry might be able to research that makes these things more effective? And I'd also say that we have a very active adoption program, so that if we are challenged by the number of wild horses and burros, we'd love to find good homes for them, where they're expanded beyond that federal range into the private sector. So for those that are passionate about it, I encourage you to think of constructive solutions in this time of constrained resources. Think about opportunities to work with the private sector on birth control and other methods, and I will continue to work and encourage my colleagues at the Bureau of Land Management and other agencies to come up with a solution that is a long-term solution. But this has been going on a long time, Tim, so it's not going to be an overnight answer.
Right, that's a good point. Well, thank you, Secretary Jewell. We're going to take another question now from the live chat, and this question is from David. And his question is, what are the DOI priorities with working with tribes in regards to trust lands and sharing GIS data with tribes to restore tribal homelands?
Well, thanks, David. I appreciate the question. I am very committed to upholding our trust and treaty obligations to tribes. We have a very active effort going on around the Cobell settlement to make sure that we accelerate land into trusts, and I think that you'll see ongoing announcements about which areas we're focusing on as we take our resources and concentrate them to getting that done and getting it done within the time frame that's identified in the Cobell settlement. I do know that we don't have a proud history and tradition as a federal government of policies that have been helpful to Indian country. In fact, sometimes the opposite. With President Obama's commitment, with my predecessor, Secretary Salazar's commitment, with the new White House Council on Native American Affairs that I'm chairing at the request of the President, but involves just about every cabinet agency, we're making sure that we're bringing the whole federal family to the table to understand what we can do as various agencies to help support and engage in a way that tribes want us to. So governance, self-determination are very important. To the question around GIS mapping, and I'll quickly touch on that, we are at a time in our history where we have great capacity to leverage mapping tools on a nationwide scale. One of the priorities that I've laid out, in addition to strengthening tribal nations, is around a landscape level understanding and using GIS tools to do that. So I think if you have specifics on how it might relate to trust lands, we'd be delighted to see that. Landscape level data and GIS mapping allows us to get down to a pretty granular level. And the USGS, which is also part of Interior, is the so the focal point for these GIS mapping tools on a nationwide basis, and they will be working with tribes. So it's a great suggestion, and I will definitely encourage my colleagues that are doing the land transfers to take a look at how we might be able to leverage those tools.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Jewell. And again, I just want to remind everybody that we're here with Secretary Sally Jewell talking about National Public Lands Day. So we're going to move on to another question that is related to National Public Lands Day. And this is from Jim in Connecticut. And he is mentioning that not only is Saturday National Public Lands Day, but is also the 41st anniversary of National Hunting and Fishing Day. And his question is, with access to lands becoming more and more difficult, do you have any plans to expand access to public lands to provide America's 40 million sportsmen and sportswomen more opportunities to enjoy America's great outdoors?
Well, it is a National Hunting and Fishing Day, and I do hope that if you're not working on public lands, or if you are, you might be able to combine both with a little sportsman's activity. Sportsmen and women have been a cornerstone of conservation for many decades. I think Theodore Roosevelt, a great sportsman and a great conservationist, really recognized that healthy ecosystems are critical to having species that do fuel the great American pastime of hunting and angling, and also connect us to the landscapes in ways that are very natural for us as a species. So in my prior work in the outdoor recreation industry, I can tell you that broadly speaking, outdoor recreation is a huge driver of our economy, something just under $650 billion a year. A good chunk of that is from the hunting and angling community. So thanks for the call out about National Hunting and Fishing Day. I hope that people do enjoy this, and access is a very important part of what we're committed to doing. One little congressional tool that has been very, very helpful for nearly 50 years is the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That is something that has been very, very helpful in enabling us to buy easements, for example, across private land, or sometimes outright purchases of land that are critical for habitat and for sportsmen's activities. So I encourage you to share your support of the Land and Water Conservation Fund, to take a look at what it might do within your own state, both the stateside program and the national program. And if these things are important to you and access is important, to continue to make the case, as I do, to our elected officials that it's important that we support this fund as we've requested actually in the President's budget for 2014.
And the only thing I would add is there's a site called recreation.gov that has a lot of fantastic opportunities both for hunting and fishing, but also just enjoying America's public lands, no matter what you're interested in, hiking, biking, camping, you name it. All of it is at recreation.gov, so check that out today. All right, we've probably got another 5 or 6 minutes, so if you've got a final question, feel free to send them in, and we're just going to keep rolling along. The next one is from Harry in Colorado, and he asked, we have heard a lot about the 21st Century Conservation Service Corps and how it will provide jobs and service opportunities for thousands of young Americans and veterans who work on public and tribal lands and water. Where does this fit within your priorities, and when would you expect to launch such an effort?
Well, I appreciate Harry's comment on this. I am very, very committed to engaging our young people to public lands. The Civilian Conservation Corps, back during the Great Depression, a time when we were in much worse shape than we are now, certainly economically, was a time when our country chose to put people to work and did it in a way where they connected them to public lands that we still enjoy today. And for those young people who went to work on public lands, they never lost that connection to place. So this is a different time and place, but we do have a network of conservation corps all over the country, because I've worked alongside a number of them on service projects. The 21 CSC or 21st Century Conservation Service Corps is going to be different because we're in different times. It will be, as it is now, really working alongside organizations like the Student Conservation Association and other core network members around the country that know their communities and connect people young and old to those public lands in areas that make those federal, state, or local dollars go so much farther. This weekend, National Public Lands Day, is a great illustration of one day is actually being done 365 days across this country in engaging people to environmental stewardship. Interior plays a major role in this. We have the public lands. Regular order with the budget will actually enable us to put the volunteer coordinators in place to use the volunteers that choose to work on our lands. Right now, in a time of sequestration, we actually have more volunteers than we can always put to work because we are of the way our budget's not working right now. So we will be getting back to regular order, I hope. We will be focusing on how we can lean into the communities. And I know from personal experience that when people, especially people that have very little connection to public lands, get out and work on those lands, build a trail, build a structure, clean up garbage, remove invasive species, that not only do they understand that landscape, they never look at it the same way. They go to that place and they'll look for the tree they planted, they'll look at the land that they cleared, they'll look at the building that they worked on. And I can't think of a better way to engage America's young people than that. And a few of them will get jobs at Interior, and we want to bring back more youth hiring than we've been able to do in the last year because of the budget situation. So I am hoping we'll get past some of the craziness that's happening around our budgets in Washington, D.C., and when we get to regular order, this will absolutely be a priority for me.
Great. And just as a reminder, if you're interested in volunteering this weekend, there are events all across the country, and go to publiclandsday.org for more information on activities that are right around the corner from you. So the next question, as we keep moving along, is from Carl in California, and his question is, what is the department doing currently to increase access to the disabled to our national public lands?
Appreciate the question from Carl. There's no question that we want our public lands to be accessible and feel welcoming to all people, Americans and visitors alike. And we know that accessibility is really important to a good part of our public that can't access all of our lands if we don't make them accessible. So it's very important. I was just today actually getting an update from the National Park Service on some of its efforts around fixing up a crumbling infrastructure, what's needed to do that. And one of their high priorities was in fact around access and making sure that things are ADA accessible. So it is a priority. It also takes money. So all of those things working in concert, we're trying to make sure that the facilities are welcome and accessible, and that's certainly going on in all of our land management agencies.
Great, thank you. Well, we have time for 2 more questions, so we'll just keep going here. The next question is from Audrey in Florida, and her question is, of the 15 cabinet level departments, Interior ranks on the lower side for diversity in the workforce. Why is that, and how do you tend to correct it as diversity begins with top management?
Well, thanks, Audrey. If this is my friend Audrey in Florida, I really appreciate her commitment to diversity in so many areas. It has been interesting to come into the Department of the Interior, and it may surprise folks out there, but I have sensed a very deep commitment to diversity and inclusion at every level across Interior. We don't have as much diversity as the nation in the Department of the Interior. We don't have the broad American public enjoying their public lands in relation to their makeup of our population. I believe strongly that public lands need to be accessible and welcoming to the whole public. And part of that is, what is the face of the Department of the Interior that is greeting people as they come to these facilities? What is the face of the senior leadership of Interior that is creating role modeling and aspirations so that people do say, this is a place that I'd like to bring my talents. Over this last week, I have had opportunities to dig in on this topic with a number of folks both inside and outside Interior. As I've gone around the landscape and met with wildlife refuge managers, national park superintendents, BLM state directors, and otherwise, I have sensed a very consistent commitment to increasing the diversity of our workforce and making sure that our country is more reflective of the population. I'll also say, not to hark back on a consistent theme, but our youth hiring programs, which by the nature of the demographics of the population and the effort made across Interior, have been more diverse as we have welcomed young people into this organization that get us on the radar, and they're thinking about their college career, or they're in their college careers, and they're deciding What do I do? Well, maybe becoming a wildlife biologist is of interest because they've had a summer job with us. Maybe becoming a park ranger is of an interest, or a land manager. Those programs have been disproportionately hit in the last year, and that is, we've just got to get past this so that we can do what you expect of us, Audrey, and make sure that when we're hiring, we are reflecting the country, and when people come and visit our sites, they see people that look like them and that understand the history and culture that is so rich here. So all of it's very important, and I certainly sense a commitment of my colleagues here at Interior.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Jewell. And we have time for one final question, and this one is from Terry in New Mexico. And this is a question related to urban refuges and parks. And can you speak about your vision for these urban refuges and how you see them meeting the administration's goals of getting more people outside?
Well, one of the major trends going on around the country is urbanization. Whether we like it or not, it's actually happening around the world. People are moving to cities. And when you combine that to the way we spend our time, how overscheduled we are, how much screen time we spend, how much time our children tend to spend in organized youth sports that maybe takes them away from the natural wonder of exploring the outdoors or creating their own games, we get a disconnect from nature that I believe is undermining one of the fundamental needs that we have as human beings, which is engaging with nature. Urban parks and refuges, city parks, natural areas, vacant lots, all of these things are really, really important to a child's healthy development. Children will invent games if you give them a chance. Children will resolve their own conflicts. You don't have to tell them to resolve them if they have a chance to do that. And nature is the best classroom for so much of what we need as adults in living together in a civil society. So I think urban parks and refuges provide a great feeder system to appreciate the national wildlife refuges, the national parks, the vast lands of the BLM. Even in Indian country, in tribal areas, finding opportunities to connect our children to nature that may be close by is really important to history and culture and childhood development. So whether urban, rural, tribal, connecting young people to nature is critical, and making sure that it's close to home, perhaps accessible with public transportation, someplace that families can take them is really important. So for all of you listening, because I think we're about to wrap up, I just would encourage you this weekend to take a little person by the hand, borrow one if you don't have one yourself, get them out into the public lands. If you can get them to pick up garbage with you or do a little work for National Public Lands Day, all the better. But connect our little people to the green world that we are all a part of, so that they can, in fact, care for these places that are so special and I think critical to our health and well-being. Great.
Well, thank you, Secretary Jewell, and thank you everybody online for tuning in today for our special National Public Lands Day chat with Secretary Jewell. We got some really great questions, and we'll be posting this chat on our YouTube channel and on DOI.gov in the coming days, and it will remain on live stream over the next couple of weeks. So, Secretary Jewell, do you have any parting remarks, or are we good?
You know, come out and play on Saturday, do a little work, publiclandsday.org,
Yep.
Tell you where to go in your own state. And gosh, whether your weather is like this that Tim and I are enjoying here, or whether it's pouring down rain, the natural world is what we're all a part of. So I encourage you to get out and enjoy it. And again, if you see a federal employee at a national park or a wildlife refuge or with the U.S. Geological Survey or the Bureau of Indian Affairs, just thank them for what they do, because it's not easy to be a federal employee, but our work is really important. Thanks a lot.
Great. And just as a final parting gift here, we had a project this summer called Summer in America's Great Outdoors, where we asked you to submit your photos of your favorite activities on all of our public lands across the country, and the response was unbelievable. Over 1,300 of you sent in photos, ranging from coast to coast, every state. It was an amazing to see them all come in. And so we're going to leave you now with some of the highlights that we received over the last few months. And this is just a rough cut, and we'll have another one up on our YouTube channel later this week. But this is a preview for you now. So thanks again for your time, and we look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thanks, Tim.